The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the hospital corridor as doctors pushed Mama Ifeoma's bed toward the emergency room. Rain battered violently against the windows. Her weak hand stretched slightly from the moving bed, while oxygen tubes shook against her
Chinedu.
face. Then, very faintly, she whispered one name.
Where is her
Chinedu,
son?
but he wasn't there. A nurse quickly looked around. Where is her son? No answer. Only the cold sound of the heart monitor filling the hallway. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Subscribe now, because the story you're about to hear is not just entertainment. It's a lesson. It's pain. It's reality. And the craziest part, everything that happened on Mother's Day started long before that day ever came. So let's go back to where it all truly began. The pot slipped from Mama Ifeoma's hands and exploded across the wet roadside. Hot stew splashed onto the gutter as passing cars sprayed muddy water over everything she had spent hours cooking. People stopped briefly, looked, then kept walking. But Mama Ifeoma didn't move. She just stood there in the rain staring at the ruined food while smoke slowly disappeared into the cold Lagos morning. Then her phone vibrated. Her tired face softened instantly. Chinedu, she answered quickly. Hello, my son? But only silence answered her. The call had ended accidentally. Her smile faded gently. Still, she whispered softly into the dead line anyway. God protect you wherever you are. Across the city, Chinedu sat inside a cramped apartment lit only by his laptop screen. Empty energy drink cans covered the floor beside unpaid bills and half-eaten noodles. The sound of keyboard taps filled the room, while client messages flooded his screen. Bro, this edit is too slow. You missed deadline again. Please respond ASAP. He rubbed his eyes aggressively. 3 days without proper sleep, 2 rejected job interviews, 1 landlord threatening eviction. His phone vibrated again. Mom calling. He stared at it, then flipped the phone over. Amaka noticed immediately from where she sat beside the window. You're ignoring her again. I'll call later. You always say later. Chinedu exhaled hard. Amaka, I beg, not today. Her expression softened. She understood this version of him too well. The exhausted version, the ashamed version, the version that disappeared whenever life started beating him down. She quietly placed a nylon bag of food on the table. You haven't eaten. I'm not hungry. You said that yesterday too. He finally looked at her. For a moment, his tough expression cracked. You know what's funny? He said quietly. Everybody thinks I'm going somewhere in life. My mother still introduces me proudly like I've made it already. Amaka stayed silent. She sacrificed everything for me. He continued bitterly. And look at me, almost 30, editing nonsense videos for people who don't even respect me. You're trying. Tired of trying. Rain battered the windows harder. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then his phone buzzed again, an unknown number. He answered irritably. Hello? Mr. Chinedu Okafor? Yes. This is Balogun Group. We reviewed your proposal. Mr. Balogun would like to see you tomorrow morning. Everything froze. Even Amaka noticed the shift in his face immediately. After the call ended, she leaned forward carefully. What's happened? He looked stunned. They want to see me. Who? Balogun Group. Her eyes widened instantly. Everybody in Lagos knew Balogun Group. Money, power, connections. The type of company that changed lives overnight. For the first time in weeks, hope entered Chinedu's eyes. And somehow, that scared Amaka more than his sadness did. The next morning, Lagos moved with its usual madness. Danfo buses screamed through traffic. Street huskers chased cars. Generators growled endlessly beneath humid skies. But inside Balogun Group, everything felt unnaturally quiet. Cold marble floors, glass walls,
expensive silence. Chinedu adjusted his cheap suit nervously while waiting outside the office. Then the doors opened. Mr. Balogun entered without looking at him. Tall, sharp grey beard, eyes completely unreadable. He sat slowly behind the massive desk. "You're talented," Balogun said casually, while flipping through papers. "Your proposal was smart." "Thank you, sir. But talent without desperation is useless." Chinedu frowned slightly. Balogun finally looked up. "You need money." The statement hit too accurately. Chinedu stayed silent. Balogun leaned back calmly. "I like desperate people. They make quick decisions." Then he pushed a file across the desk. Inside was a redevelopment contract worth more money than Chinedu had ever seen in his life. His heartbeat quickened immediately. "This project begins next week," Balogun continued. "You'll oversee digital operations and media management." Chinedu could barely breathe properly anymore. This was everything he prayed for. Everything. Then he saw the location, a market redevelopment zone, dozens of old roadside shops marked for demolition. His stomach tightened slightly. "These traders will be compensated?" he asked carefully. Balogun smiled faintly. "You're still emotional." "That's not what I asked. Poor people always survive somehow." Something about the answer felt wrong, but the figures on the contract kept pulling his eyes back. Enough money to clear debts, enough to move his mother out of hardship forever, enough to finally breathe again. Balogun noticed the hesitation instantly. "Success is expensive, Chinedu. The question is whether you can afford it." Silence filled the office. Then, Chinedu signed. The pen shook slightly in his hand, but he signed anyway. Balogun smiled slowly. "Good. Welcome to the real world." Outside the building, Chinedu stood motionless under the hot afternoon sun, trying to process everything. Then his phone buzzed again, a voice note from his mother. He pressed play absent-mindedly while entering a taxi. "My son, happy Mother's Day. I know you're busy. I just wanted to hear your voice small. Don't forget to eat properly. And please rest. You work too hard." Her voice cracked slightly near the end. "You're all I have." The taxi moved forward through traffic, but Chinedu suddenly felt strangely cold. Back at the market, Mama Ifeoma folded clothes quietly inside her tiny shop, while traders gossiped nearby. One woman laughed loudly. "They say one big company wants to destroy this place completely." Another woman hissed, "Where do they expect us to go?" Mama Ifeoma stayed quiet. Then she looked up slowly at the leaking roof above her shop. The same shop that trained her son through university. The same shop where she hid tears whenever business was bad. Her phone vibrated again. No new messages from Chinedu. Still? She smiled softly anyway. "He's probably busy working," she whispered to herself. Far across the city, Chinedu stared blankly out of the taxi window, while the signed contract rested heavily on his lap. And for the first time, success didn't feel exciting anymore. The rain started falling again. Over the next few days, the city grew louder with anger. Traders protested across the market as demolition notices spread from stall to stall. And every day Chinedu buried himself deeper into work, pretending not to notice the guilt, slowly eating him alive. Then, one rainy afternoon, everything finally exploded. Rain hammered violently against the hospital windows, while Chinedu sat inside his new office staring at the market demolition footage looping endlessly across his laptop screen. Women screaming, police dragging wooden tables, children crying beside scattered tomatoes and broken baskets. Then, he saw her, just for a second, Mama Ifeoma, arguing desperately with officials while clutching the edge of her stall. Chinedu froze completely. No. The video replayed again, this time longer. And there was no mistake.
His mother's shop was inside the demolition zone. A deep silence swallowed the room. Then his phone rang immediately. Amaka calling. He answered quickly. Amaka, your mother collapsed. Everything inside him stopped. By the time Chinedu reached the hospital, his shirt was soaked from the storm outside. Nurses rushed through crowded hallways while worried relatives slept on benches beneath flickering lights. Amaka stood near the ward entrance. The moment she saw him, disappointment flashed across her face before relief replaced it. She's stable now. Chinedu exhaled shakily. What's happened? She fainted during the protest. His chest tightened instantly. Can I see her? Amaka nodded quietly. Inside the ward, Mama Ifeoma looked smaller somehow. Weak, fragile. The oxygen tube beneath her nose shook slightly with every breath. Chinedu slowly sat beside her bed. For a moment, all the noise in his life disappeared completely. No contracts, no money, no ambition, just his mother. Her fingers twitched slightly. Then her eyes opened slowly. Chinedu. His throat tightened instantly. Mommy. She stared at him quietly for a few seconds, then asked the question softly. You work for those people? Silence. Pure silence. Outside, thunder shook the windows. Finally, he spoke. It's not like that. Her tired eyes filled with confusion. They said your name. He looked away immediately. Mommy, listen. That's market. Her voice cracked weakly. That shop fed you your entire life. Every word stabbed deeper. I know. Then why? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out, because the truth sounded ugly no matter how he arranged it. Because desperation always sounds selfish when explained out loud. Tears slowly gathered in her eyes. Not loud crying, not anger, just disappointment. The kind that crushes harder than shouting ever could. You didn't even tell me. That broke him more than anything else. Chinedu stood abruptly and walked out before she could see tears forming in his own eyes. Outside the ward, Amaka followed him quickly. You used to talk about protecting her, she said quietly. What happened to you? He laughed bitterly. Life happened. That's not an excuse. You think I wanted this? He snapped suddenly. You think I enjoy waking up every day feeling like I'm drowning? People nearby turned slightly, but he didn't care anymore. I'm tired, Amaka. Tired of struggling. Tired of being broke. Tired of watching my mother suffer because I can't provide enough. Her voice softened. So your solution was becoming the thing that hurt her. He couldn't answer because she was right, and they both knew it. Just then, two men in suits approached the corridor. Mr. Chinedu Okafor? Yes? One of them handed him documents calmly. Final notice concerning loan default. Confusion crossed his face immediately. What loan? The man frowned slightly. The collateral loan registered under Mama Ifeoma Enterprises. Amaka's expression changed instantly. What collateral? Chinedu grabbed the papers quickly. His stomach dropped. The shop documents. His mother's shop. Amaka stared at him in disbelief. You used her shop? He stayed silent. Her voice cracked sharply. Tell me you didn't. I was going to pay it back. When? Soon. Soon, she exploded. Chinedu, that woman trusted you. People stared openly now, but Amaka no longer cared. You didn't just betray her business, she continued emotionally. You betrayed our safety. I had no choice. There's always a choice. The words echoed loudly through the corridor. Then silence. Pain filled Amaka's eyes. Not anger anymore. Pain. You're becoming someone I don't recognize. That sentence hit harder than every insult before it. She stepped back slowly and walked away. Chinedu didn't stop her, because deep down, he agreed. Hours later, he stood alone on the hospital balcony, while rain poured endlessly across Lagos. His phone vibrated again. Femi. Guy, where are you? Hospital. Pause. Ah, your mama. Yes. Femi sighed heavily. Come see me tonight. Why? I need to tell you something. The rooftop bar overlooked most of the city. Traffic lights glowed beneath the rain, while loud music echoed faintly from downstairs. Femi sat already drunk beside the railing, holding a bottle loosely. The moment Chinedu arrived, he knew something was wrong. You look terrible, Femi muttered. Say what you called me for. Femi laughed weakly. You always liked getting straight to the point. Femi, another long silence. Then finally, I told Balogun about your deaths. Everything froze. Chinedu stared at him blankly. What? I told him you were desperate. The city noise below suddenly sounded distant, unreal. Femi avoided eye contact completely. He was looking for somebody hungry enough to do dirty work. Chinedu stepped closer slowly. You sold me out? You are already drowning. And you pushed my head deeper? Femi stood abruptly now. You think it was easy watching everybody praise you our whole lives? He snapped bitterly. You are always the smart one, the chosen one. Meanwhile, I was just there. That's why you destroyed me? I wanted one chance, Femi shouted emotionally. One chance to matter too. Chinedu's fist tightened violently. For a second, it looked like he might hit him, but Femi wasn't finished. There's something else. The tension shifted immediately. What? Femi swallowed hard. Balogun knew your mother. Silence. What are you talking about? When we were kids, his family was poor too. Your mother used to feed them sometimes. Chinedu frowned deeply. No, it's true. The rain intensified around them. So he destroyed our market knowing exactly who she was. Femi nodded slowly, and your mother never knew. A dangerous silence followed. Then Chinedu finally spoke, very quietly. If anything happens to her? Femi looked away immediately, but before Chinedu could say another word, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered impatiently. Hello? A nurse's voice answered urgently. Mr. Okafor, your mother is asking for you. Then a pause. You should come quickly. By the time Chinedu reached the hospital, visiting hours had ended. The hallways were quieter now. Only the distant squeak of nurse carts and the low hum of fluorescent lights filled the building. Rainwater dripped steadily from the sleeves of his shirt as he hurried toward his mother's ward, with panic tightening every breath. Then he stopped. The bed was empty. For one terrifying second, his heart nearly failed. Mummy. A nurse arranging medication nearby looked up. She asked to sit outside. Relief crashed through him so hard his knees almost weakened. He found her at the end of the corridor near a cracked window overlooking the city lights. A thin hospital blanket rested over her shoulders while she stared silently into the rainy night. She looked tired. Not physically. Soul tired. The kind of exhaustion no medicine fixes. Slowly, Chinedu sat beside her. Neither of them spoke immediately. Cars moved below like tiny streams of light. Finally, she broke the silence softly. When you were small, you used to hate thunderstorms. Chinedu looked down quietly. You would run into my room every time. A faint smile touched her lips. You said the sky sounded angry. He swallowed hard. Mommy, you know why I worked so hard for you? Her voice remained calm. Because I didn't want life to harden your heart the way it hardened mine. That sentence nearly shattered him. Tears burned behind his eyes instantly. She turned slowly toward him. But somewhere along the way, you became afraid too. He frowned painfully. Afraid of what? Failing. Silence. Pure silence again. Because she was right. Every terrible decision, every lie, every betrayal. It all came from fear. Fear of being nothing. Fear of disappointing her. Fear of becoming another forgotten man swallowed by Lagos hardship. His voice cracked finally. I wanted to help you. I know. But I kept messing everything up. She nodded gently. That's what human beings do. The simplicity of her answer broke something inside him completely. He looked at her with tears now falling openly. I used your shop papers without telling you. I know. His chest tightened sharply. You knew? Mothers usually know more than their children think. He covered his face briefly in shame. I'm sorry. No defense this time, no excuses, just truth. And somehow that made the apology heavier. Mama Ifeoma touched his hand softly. When your father died, I was angry at life for many years, she admitted quietly. I became hard, bitter. Sometimes I even shouted at God. Chinedu listened silently. But one day I realized something. She continued. Pain that isn't healed gets transferred. He slowly looked at her. If you carry too much shame, too much anger, too much fear, eventually you will pour it onto people who love you. The words settled deep into him. Outside, thunder rolled softly across the sky. Then she smiled weakly. Come home sometimes, Chinedu. That nearly destroyed him completely. Not buy me a house, not be successful, not fix my life. Just come home sometimes. Tears streamed down his face openly now, and for the first time in years, he stopped trying to hide them. The next morning, Lagos woke beneath grey skies and heavy humidity. Inside Balogan Group, tension filled the air. Employees whispered nervously after hearing rumors about Chinedu confronting executives overnight. Then the elevator doors opened, and Chinedu walked in calmly. No fear anymore, no desperation, just clarity. He entered Balogun's office without knocking. The older man barely looked up. You look terrible. Chinedu dropped the signed contract onto the desk. I'm done. That got Balogun's attention immediately. You're emotional. No, Chinedu replied calmly. I'm awake. Balogun leaned back slowly. You think morality feeds people? No, but guilt eats people alive. A faint smile crossed Balogun's face. You sound like your mother. That changed the atmosphere instantly. Chinedu stepped closer. You knew her. Balogun stayed silent. When you were poor. Still silent. Then finally, yes. The answer landed heavily. For the first time, Balogun looked older somehow, less untouchable. She used to give my mother leftover food after market, he admitted quietly. Back when nobody respected us. Chinedu stared at him in disbelief. And you still destroyed her shop? Balogun's expression hardened slightly again. I built my empire by surviving. At the cost of people like her? The older man stood now. You think kindness changes the world? He snapped sharply. It doesn't. Power does. Then why do you still remember her? That question silenced the room completely. Balogun looked away briefly, and for one tiny moment, regret appeared. Real regret. She was one of the last good people I knew before money changed everything. The confession hung heavily between them. Then Chinedu picked up the contract calmly, ripped it in half. Balogun watched silently. No anger, no shouting, just quiet understanding. Because deep down, both men knew this wasn't really about business anymore. It was about the kind of people they were becoming. Chinedu turned toward the door. You know what the saddest part is, he said softly. You became rich enough to save people and still chose to hurt them. Then he walked away. Outside the building, sunlight finally broke through the clouds for the first time in days. Not bright sunlight, but enough. Enough to feel different.
enough to feel like something had ended. Weeks later, the market slowly began rebuilding after public outrage forced Balogun Group into negotiations. It wasn't perfect. Many traders still struggled, but Mama Ifeoma reopened a smaller stall with help from nearby women who refused to abandon her. One evening, she arranged tomatoes quietly beneath the orange glow of sunset when she noticed someone approaching through the crowd. Chinedu. This time without expensive clothes, without stress twisting his face, without pretending, just her son. She smiled instantly. "You came." He laughed softly. "I told you I would." Then he picked up a stool beside her stall and started helping arrange vegetables. Nearby traders stared in surprise. One woman laughed loudly. Ah, university graduate selling tomatoes now?" But Chinedu smiled peacefully. "For now." His mother looked at him carefully and realized something important. For the first time since he became an adult, he looked free. That night, they closed the stall together. As they walked home slowly through the busy Lagos streets, the evening noise wrapping around them like a familiar blanket, Chinedu felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. He didn't rush to check it this time. Not like before, not like the man who used to treat every notification like survival. He gently pulled it out.
The screen lit up. Another work notification. Another client message. Another deadline waiting to pull him back into the life he had just started stepping out of. For a moment, he just stared at it. Then he looked sideways at his mother walking beside him. Mama Ifeoma was carrying a small bag of leftover vegetables from her stall. Her steps were slow, but steady. There was a quiet peace in the way she walked now, like someone who had survived too much, but was still choosing softness anyway. She noticed his pause. "Who is it?" she asked gently. Chinedu hesitated. The phone vibrated again. Once more. Insistent. Urgent. The old version of him would have already answered. But this time, he exhaled slowly and pressed decline. His mother raised a curious brow. "Work?" she asked. Chinedu slipped the phone back into his pocket, then smiled faintly. Nothing important. A brief silence followed between them. Not awkward, just calm. The kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled anymore. They continued walking together through the warm Lagos evening, side by side, as the city kept rushing past them, while for once, they didn't.